Favorite highlight of any job was, well, there was this one project I'm thinking of. No, two projects I worked on where our office literally was overlooking a site. And the amount of times that the commercial or quantity surveyor team would come over and ask, have we done X? And the answer is, look out the window.
Yeah, but have you ever, I've been caught looking out the window and then I still get your fucking boots on and go out there. I was like, I could see it though.
Welcome back to the Off-Site Podcast. I am Jason Lanzini, joined once again by co-host with the most, Carlos Carvalho. And today we are talking the trend of general contractors becoming ConTech investors and the big push into corporate venture capital off the back of the news that Turner is creating a CVC arm. Then we're going to look at a post that describes something near and dear to our heart, the 7 key habits of staying on schedule and planning as a major construction project. And then finally, probably a little bit conceited, we're going to ask ourselves a question: which part of the construction software marketplace we would be interested to tackle if we were starting all over again and not building short-term planning software. Carlos, how are you? Fresh off a stag do, bucks party, that sort of thing?
Fresh is the word. Yeah, I think it's what I would describe as a mature group of adults going on a stag do. So
that sounds like a big orgy, actually, if you just listen to what you said. And it's
yeah, I regret that statement, but no, it was paddle, it was a boat trip, things like that.
Sorry, just to go into that, it was interesting that we had very different weekends, but actually in some ways quite the same then. Massive discussion on an argument here on the weekend. Is it paddle or padel?
It's only padel if you listen to Eddie or Archie Curzon from Clapham. It's paddle to everyone else. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I had the same conversation in Germany here, where we went and found a local paddle court and played a little. And yeah, the big argument was paddle versus padel. Someone can clarify in the comments. Yeah,
maybe that is a broader argument than I assumed. I thought it was just guys from Clapham calling it padel.
I think that and the Spanish maybe.
Yeah. Well, they said paddle, and I think it's Spanish origin.
Oh, you were in Spain? Okay, yeah, no, my comment was because it is Spanish origin. So yeah, okay, you would know.
Yeah, for sure. But no, good fun. Yeah.
Very good. So you're going to do all the stories about things that happened on the stag do?
No, they have to stay where they were, I think. But,
on the paddle court?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, all good.
This time next week, I don't know if we are going to record, but we might be recording from very sunny Da Nang in Vietnam as we're taking the whole company on a road trip to Vietnam. I look forward to it.
Yeah, for anyone listening, as a remote first business, pretty exciting to be able to meet a lot of people for the first time that we've worked with for, years in some cases. So yeah, massively looking forward to it.
And you've been spreading the rumor that Stag Do Part 2.
Yeah. That's probably Mike.
Cool. Well, we've got a couple of interesting topics. The first two are really interesting to me. So let's dive in right off the back, and I'll frame it up. So recently, we spotted in the news that the US construction giant Turner had created its own venture capital arm with the aim of investing in early stage and growth stage startups in the industry. This is something that is a growing trend in the construction and built world space. And it probably warrants the question of why does it happen? What's the calculus inside of these contractors that drives them to do it? Before I hand over and land on a question, framing it up, in previous conversations, Carlos, we've talked at length about how the construction industry is high risk, low margin. We've talked a lot about how contractors are forced into this winner's curse where they're trying to bid jobs. The jobs are picked on lowest bid. And the one that wins the job is the one that's got the most lift and the hardest work to do to make any money from the job. It seems somewhat counter to the point that they would also spin up investing arms that require a lot of illiquid cash that gets locked up for quite a period of time. So maybe we could actually wind back and start with like, what is venture capital and corporate venture capital in particular, just for those that aren't like super familiar with the industry. So there's a industry of venture capital firms whose job is to professionally find companies that can grow at outsized rates, that they can invest money into, with the hope that at someday there is some liquidity, as in the company sells or goes public or something, that returns them a rate of money that is worth the investment for locking up for 5, 7, 10 years or something, compared to what you might do if you just put the money in the bank or in the stock market. Corporate venture capital is this phenomenon where instead of professional investors with whose job is solely to drive this return on money, they are typically companies that spin up within the company a venture firm, and they have slightly different goals. Often they'll talk about strategic investments that maybe relate back to the business that they're naturally in. So an example would be a general contractor investing in a construction technology company that they may be also a customer for. So that's a bit of like that's the worst 101 course on venture capital that anyone's ever done. But what do you reckon the calculus is here for why Turner or why general contractors generally would enter into this business?
Yeah, I think there's definitely two sort of sides to it, and each of them have their own pros and cons. There's obviously the pull or the law being contractors make 2-3%. They can utilize their experience and influence decisions in a market. If they were investing in tools, they could have a very high return down the line. So you can see why that's an appealing space to get into. But as a contractor actually sort of trying to function, you've always got the choices of really to sort of build, buy, or bet. So build something internally, purchase a tool from the market, or bet on a tool being successful, which is like the investment idea. And we have our view on contractors building tools. There's not too many success stories there to sort of shout about. So you're buying, or you could invest in tools. In terms of the why they might be doing that, getting in at an early stage with a software vendor will allow you to be fairly influential, and you could sort of selfishly make sure that tool is perfect for your organization, but you're already sort of running with blinkers on, and maybe restrict the ability for that tool to actually be sort of broader market fit rather than just company fit. So it's potentially an all eggs in a basket situation.
Do you want, is that like just double clicking on that point of I think that's true. I think a lot of them have the view, and when you read the press releases or prospectus, it's a broad phenomenon. Turner are joining the fray. One of the most famous or well known is Suffolk in the UK, who have in the US, that have very broad programs around investment. DPR do, Bouygues do in Europe, as does Vinci, Skanska. So it's a fairly broad phenomenon. Often when you read the press releases, etc., they will talk about kind of having a influence or guiding hand over the development of the technology, which begs the question whether that's a good thing.
If I was a contractor, would I want to start betting on tools and losing the thing that I think is best, which is agility? You want to be able to drop a tool and pick up a tool when there's a best in market. And as a contractor just trying to deliver jobs, I wouldn't want the influence of a venture arm saying, we could really do with you sticking with this tool, because our investment's going to die if the contractor that actually invests in it doesn't use it, let alone everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And you're soaking up the time and energy of the team to refine that tool, potentially, if it's an early stage investment. Mm-hmm. So the loss of freedom or the loss of agility is quite a con that outweighs a lot of the pros.
Yep.
I'm not completely up to date on how many investments VCs typically look to be a winner out of all all the bets, but
Yep.
are they in a position to be making that many bets at the detriment of the project?
Well, yeah, that's such a good point, right? Because like professional venture firms, so they're in the job of uncovering and probably as early as possible picking potential category winners. And venture firms, professional venture firms, has this concept of the power law where some very small subset of all of their investments will actually be winners and they will pay for all of the losers that are in that batch. So, and it's venture as a whole industry is going through a moment of like so many of them are actually underperforming, just putting the money in the stock market or even the bank in some cases. And so even for professional firms, it's incredibly difficult to pick some small percentage of winners inside of a whole portfolio. Corporate venture firms have, if their goal is to guide the development of it so it fits inside their business, they're almost forced to like needing like 100% success rate or some really abnormally high success rate because they're going to invest so much institutional time in this company because they're kind of picking their winner that is going to be something that they're going to guide and ideally deploy. So I think it sets up a like impossible scenario in that way where, yeah, in order to not waste a whole bunch of time of their people and their projects, they have to be picking at well above the best venture firms in the world.
Yeah, they just be absolutely nailing it. But I guess I've boxed my thoughts into software. If we think outside of software, I think it completely flips the argument. If there's some sort of innovation or proprietary something, like I think an example back, this is going back a long way, and I'm pretty sure it was Costain, where they developed the concrete railway sleeper, which used to be oak or timber or whatever it was.
Right.
And that's patented. So it makes a lot of sense to invest in a company that comes out with a material or something physical on site.
That sounds like an internally developed innovation that they then patented. It wasn't an investment in
No, but I mean,
company.
I guess what I'm saying is if there was some sort of startup that's come out with something which you would sort of dominate the market in that space, rather than sort of software that has 15 competitors.
Right.
I'm trying to think of an example right now, and it's
hard,
mind, but
yeah,
floating concrete, you might want to be first in the door for that.
Yeah, okay,
obviously
right.
We have floating concrete, but yeah, I think there's a different argument when it comes to that sort of innovation because it's easier to protect that like design patent or whatever for a long time, which is maybe a bit of a more obvious win than software, which you can go from relevant to irrelevant in a very small amount of time.
Yeah, I think one of the other arguments that they might make internally is like, oh, we think that this tool or platform or whatever has promise. It sits in a category that we have a clear gap and we can see the need for technology. We could buy the thing and we might pay some amount of money to be a customer of it. And if we just made this, minority investment in this next round, well, the benefit of that is we can have some say and some visibility and some guidance and talk to the company, which you do as a customer as well, because there's a whole other conversation of like, why would a customer, like these companies' goals are to sell software to you, so the say that you have should be probably more so as a customer rather than an investor, would be my theory of the world. Because as second the company is being guided by the investors, there's a whole other that's a whole other thing of problems that you're going to have. So I'd say they should have more say in the company as a customer or a prospective customer. But there's this argument that we're going to spend, I don't know, 400 grand a year or 500 grand a year or $1 million a year or something on this piece of software. But if we invested in this round, well, some percentage of that is delivering value back. We're getting something else for our money as a customer. What do you think of that argument? You're the CEO of some large general contractor that's thinking about spinning up a venture firm.
Yeah, it's definitely that is sort of, I guess, hidden or unobvious value that you would receive. So part of that investment, you're going to immediately win in some of those spaces. I think the other part, which becomes, I guess, a bit of a grey area, and something I've thought about before, so it's coming straight off the top of my head. But if you're a venture capitalist arm of a company which is pushing software onto the projects within that company, then ultimately that cost is probably being passed on to clients. Yeah, they can become very quickly a grey area.
I can see the wheels. I can see the wheels turning here. The QS's wheels are turning. Is this a conflict of interest?
Well, the natural thought would be we would want a discount because we're an investor in this tool, but actually it makes more sense if you're passing on the cost to overinflate the price, which generates more revenue for the company, which is growing in value quicker than the contractor can by shaving off a small fraction of the cost of one of those projects. So it puts yourself in a really odd spot there. Yeah, conflict.
Okay, you've gone down. But I think at the end of the day, like I think that the truth is that this, except in the case where these are construction contractors that have development or asset ownership businesses like a Vinci or something, which has a cash printing machine and they have the problem of what do we do with all of this cash. So you could easily see an argument that they would say, well, we've got this cash, we would go and invest it somewhere, but given we're in this business, we have some strategic insight in this business, which gives us some alpha or leverage. I could see the argument there, but for most pure play,
they should be able to accelerate some of those early stages because they can remove a lot of red tape.
Yeah, and there's the argument that they're the kingmaker. Like, if you want to be the category winner, they make you the category winner by adopting it, which I don't know, that's suspicious if that's true. But if you're a pure play general contractor, you're in a usually relatively cash poor position. You're always fighting for payments from clients. You're trying to pay your subcontractors as late as possible. There isn't millions of bucks sitting around under the couch to go and place bets on startups. Typically, I don't know that I can see the rationale that I would I'd jump at it if I was running that type of construction service business. The perceived upside is that the company that you invest in raises another round later and raises more money. And if you read the research on the success of these corporate venture firms, they'll often say, these have been really successful because the cohort of companies from contractor A's venture firm have gone on to raise $300 million worth of money. In the venture world, that's like people marking their own homework. That's not actually generating value. Like you're not getting any money back from that as the shareholder. That's just paper marks going up. I reckon if you dug into actual value returned, most of it for them would sit on the actual tool that they bought side, compared to distributed cash from exits, because they're few and far between generally in the construction industry. So these folks have to be doing something beyond, with some order of magnitude better than the professionals in the space, to be doing anything that's returning any real value. So I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you say it's fake? Or is that what I heard?
No, I think it's punchy. If I was a GC, I don't think I'd be pro investment arm. I think it's restrictive. I think you lose your agility, and I think you're just not the expert. Yeah, I don't think contractors should build tools, and I'm not sure they should be investing in them too. I think they should be
picking winners. Super. Yeah, you lose all your ability to pilot the best in the marketplace. You overfit it for yourself. There's all sorts of reasons why. Yeah, I'm with you. Cool, moving on. So the second thing that we wanted to cover was a post that we saw on LinkedIn. We both love LinkedIn. We're there all the time, hanging out in the comments. Came across a post that kind of hit close to home for us. The post was from Carl Ditchen, who detailed these 7 habits or routines that drove better planning for staying on schedule on the project. So I'll run you through the high level, and then we can talk a little bit about what bits resonated with you, and then what you see as what you think could be improved. So the 7 habits at the top was to pull plan every milestone 3 months ahead. The second was to run pre-construction meetings 3 weeks ahead. The next was to run this 6-week look-ahead planning cycle every week, to review the risk and opportunities every week, to spend 30 minutes a day doing drawing review, and then to do 30 minutes a day doing schedule review, and then every day do daily field walks. And in combination with this, he attached an image, which is probably where most of our discussion can be, around this like planning cycle. This is something that we literally talk to multiple customers per day on. So this is Kyle's recommended weekly planning cycle. Monday, identify new constraints, and then the last planners begin preparing weekly work plans. Tuesday, last planners finalize weekly work plans. Wednesday, project leadership review the look ahead and weekly work plans, and then distribute the 6-week look ahead. So that's a Wednesday. Thursday, run a weekly coordination meeting. Friday, project leadership review risk and opportunities, and then redistribute the 6-week look ahead. So yeah, this is a fairly regimented cycle. I think if I was to start and talk about the things that resonate with me, well, the first is just the concept of a cycle and rhythm. I think from our experience, or my experience with projects around the world, the most important thing is this consistent rhythm that becomes a habit on the project. So when things get harder, things get hectic, number of trades on site ramps up, that there is an established cycle that builds structure, builds collaboration, and identifies issues and people lean back on. Not that the second, it's like this chocolate teapot, the second there's any issue on the project, the first thing to go is we don't do any of the look ahead planning process because we don't have time. So first and foremost, I think any cycle is better than no cycle. What do you think?
Did you used to review all of your drawings every day for 30 minutes?
No, I did not. I thought that was probably pushing the things a bit far. I did, however, the bit I do resonate with was one of my, what I thought was a secret superpower on projects when I turned up was I would read and note and mark up every drawing that was inside of my scope and every contract document that was inside of my scope, including the head contract, and kind of training my own LLM on the specifics of this project, because I think knowing the more of that you can internalize is a massive superpower. I wouldn't do it every day, but right at the start of joining a project, I would go massively deep. I'd print my own set of drawings out in this massive plastic sleeve folder, and I'd pull them out, I'd look at them, I'd mark them up, I'd make questions, post-it notes everywhere, go ask people, what are we doing on this detail, what are we doing on that detail. The more I could build that knowledge up front, was a big unlock later.
Yeah, for sure.
What did you do as a QS?
All of that and more.
You ran the job.
Yeah, yeah. It's too important. You would understand. So I think so. Obviously, the schedule itself that's been posted. I think from a principal point of view, there's lots of aspects that we would all agree are strong points. We've got the sort of pool planning. We've got pre-construction meetings. We're doing weekly look-ahead planning meetings, daily walks to stay on top of the job. That's all good stuff. But the schedule doesn't really suggest who. It sort of just says this is a schedule of what should be done every day.
Yeah.
And if you make the assumption that that's a suggested schedule for one person or a project manager or an agent, then that's a huge amount of daily routine, leaving not too much space for everything else.
Yep.
If we make the assumption that that would be distributed responsibility to different role types that cover each of those bases, then the danger is you lose that cross-function or cross-meeting sort of knowledge that is actually the stuff that you want. So if a project manager turns up to a daily construction team kickoff, they want to be flagging potential issues, and vice versa. You want a superintendent in the look-ahead meeting to be that's never happening because this is going on. I think it's kind of let's take all the best ideas and put them all into a schedule, rather than maybe sort of, if you actually think about the particular project you're on, you'd probably cut some of those aspects to make it a bit more manageable, because it's super.
Yeah, let's dive right into the detail, one of them, for example. So take the 6-week look ahead. I think the principle here that we would try to follow, at least from our own background, is we want to do the least amount of things that drive value. We're trying to build processes for the frontline leaders that don't make extra work for them. So let's take the 6-week look ahead cadence. Here they've got a pattern of, he's saying distribute the look ahead on a Wednesday and then redistribute it on the Friday. And then that is probably off the back of a Thursday coordination meeting. What are your thoughts on, well, just like how many days that whole part of the cycle takes and the rigidity of it?
Yeah, I think I've got two problems with that. The first is just that process taking 3 days. That's quite substantial.
It's half the week. Or if you're running 5-day week, it's more than half the week.
It's more than half the week. And the other is, it's almost like it's this systematic, we plan this week for next week, and then next week we're going to plan for the week after. But in reality, not only are they suggesting it's going to take 3 days to sort of nail down next week and upcoming weeks, but doesn't really assume that the entire plan's changing every day. So you would suggest more of a quick daily exercise to make updates rather than this 3-day slog to get the plan in shape, which kind of makes an assumption that it's not going to change on Monday when the first issue pops up. So it doesn't feel very it feels a bit less reactive and a bit more reliant on the plan being successful.
I think what you're pointing at, well, this is like, admittedly, this is probably talking our own book to a degree, but like it's still worth probably covering. But there's two parts to this cadence that's worth looking at. So firstly, there's that 3-day, 6-week look ahead cadence from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and distributing on a Friday is like, I would say, broadly common practice. So you kind of run towards an end of the week replan for the following, 6 weeks. And then the second part of the cadence is like a weekly work plan preparation cadence from Monday, Tuesday, and then finalized on a Wednesday. And I think this is symptomatic of some of the issues that some projects have with really rigid processes or really rigid routines, the ones that are branded routines. If you spend 3 days planning for the next 6 weeks, and then it takes the 3 days of the next week to generate the weekly work plans for that, like you spend your whole time regenerating outputs. And really what's in that weekly work plan is driving what's in the look ahead, and what's in the look ahead is driving the weekly work plan. And so that probably points to one of the principles that we have, built AFEX around, which is these should just be views on the same plan. So you should generate your look ahead, publish it on a Friday or distribute it on a Friday, as Carl said, but that should automatically have your weekly work plan done. Not, go and generate a weekly work plan. It should just be the weekly work plan. And then on Monday, when the team run the daily, supervisors huddle or daily construction meeting, people are reporting back the progress, and that's updating not only that document that they're looking at on the screen, but every other document. So the weekly work plan is updated, the 6-week look ahead's updated. So I think the structure and the cadence here of like start the week with the plan and then replan the week at the end of the week is totally like, that's what I see on every project. Yeah. I think there's just a lot of improvement that can happen for projects about removing all of the admin by creating all of these documents that are ingrained in like systems that were created, 40 years ago. So like technology can definitely make a big impact to removing there's too many steps on these days for a person that's running a major project that also has safety responsibility, has to meet with subcontractors, has to meet with the client, has to work out how to do the design. There's too many steps on each of these days, given the responsibilities on people running projects in today's, day and age.
Yeah, for sure. It also misses the sort of daily cadence of a startup shift or a sort of daily activity briefing. Yeah. So if we think about kind of the point on these like daily micro adjustments to a plan to keep it up to date and ultimately to make sure that, like, in theory, we could reduce all sorts of issues and rework by communicating on a daily basis, not just the plan, but changes to the plan from the day before. I think that's missing from this generally. It feels very much like this is the week and the week is the week, rather than appreciating it for what it is and keeping everyone in the loop. So I think that's a big missing aspect to the schedule, which is already pretty heavy.
But I think Carl's like broadly nailed it. I think the cadence is roughly close to what we'd see on most projects and best practice. Yeah. I think where there's just I think, like you said, when you layer in like the starter shift briefing or the pre-start meeting or the daily construction, like when you layer in realistically all the other stuff that you have to do as that person running on that project, I just think there's, it's the classic thing. There's like way too many things in the list to do every day. And so I think this planning cycle needs to get narrowed down to, we update on a Thursday, we discuss it and ship it on a Friday. And then all the other things are done in the existing cadences. As we do the daily meeting on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're making the updates as a result of those meetings, not we're blocking out time to do these jobs on top of those jobs.
Yeah, for sure. And the daily field walk, probably only engineers up to a certain level do that every day. I think, not to understate the importance of that, I think that's a good addition to anyone's schedule, because everything is about knowing where we are and actually understanding that. And the worst offenders are obviously the commercial team, who get updates from from emails or conversations with their counterparts. So that should be pushed on at all, in my opinion.
Favorite highlight of any job was, there was this one project I'm thinking of. No, 2 projects I worked on where our office literally was overlooking a site. And the amount of times that the commercial or quantity surveyor team would come over and ask, have we done X? And the answer is, look out the window.
Yeah, but I've been caught looking out the window, and then I still get your fucking boots on and go out. I was like, I could see it though. But it was raining.
The best joke is this brought back a really funny memory. I was on one of these projects. There was a quantity surveyor. It was in the UK. The quantity surveyor was standing looking out the window at the site, and we just finished a weekly construction meeting where we go and argue about the schedule, etc. And all of the leadership team were walking out of the offices and down the lifts back to site. And as we walked out there to call the lift to go down, the works manager, the head construction leader of the project, walked over to this quantity surveyor and said, "That's the project." And then
that's a tough day. I actually know a QS in one of our projects, and he kept being bugged by the team to go on site. And it went on and on and on to the point where he was like, I can't ask for PPE now because it will reveal the fact that I've never been 2.5 years and I haven't been on site yet. It was,
that's when you start Googling, can I spray paint my jeans orange or something?
That's when you go and tender a package for a laser scan. You can start looking through. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Really quickly, third topic. So last week we kind of dove into another LinkedIn post from a construction software founder that was making these claims that a bunch of technology in construction today is vaporware. It's been vibe coded. It damages the industry. And after that, it brought back conversations that we're talking about off air around which parts of the industry still have wide open opportunity. The construction technology space is relatively exploded over the last, say, 5 years. And it seems like in many categories, there are many, many, many competitors or startups trying to build something that overlaps. And it brought up a discussion of are there any bits that are kind of really untouched, or maybe even there are one or two, but there's no clear winner or category leader. I know you had some thoughts, but was there anything that came up that you'd want to share with folks that they can steal and go and build?
I think for me, and this is obviously biased towards my experience of industry, which is part of the commercial team, but I've not seen any example of a bottom-up forecast or CVR that major or complex schemes can use and the team actually work in. So there's a few tools out there that will allow you to sort of plug numbers of packages or value of instructions and add that to a target cost, and it gives you a bit of this is what we're going to spend and this is what we're going to recover, and here's our profit and loss. But every QS on every scheme, and I have this conversation all the time, still work in Excel, whether it's your subcontractor package or your prelims and everything for the job, and ultimately building that back up to a first principles forecast of how much we're going to spend at the end of the job. So similar to contract schedule updates, This is the sort of thing that we do once a month at best. I've seen some projects do it quarterly. So we're not reactive to overspend signals. We're not reactive to the end result or the cost of milestones or everything else that comes with it. We're not tracking the volume of downstream compensation events with supply chain. I've got to the end of packages and we've got 5,000 CEs that are unagreed and they were happening years ago. So I guess there's a dark world of question marks and unknowns, which is also subject to numbers being muddied up to a top report that is given to a client. So there's just zero visibility. It's super inefficient. We can't pull any data or real insights. And it's still not been done as far as I can see.
As you were describing that, I had an interesting thought. So there is obviously, I guess, question is, do you see you kind of alluded to it. There are a range of tools that do the report bit of it, like where you plug the numbers in, but the working calculation and, alignment between what's going up and down is the bit that you're probably alluding to is not really broadly built or adopted. Do you see any possible link between the fact that if that existed, the client would want to see it?
Yeah, the real difficult spot for the contractor would be the client knew that system existed, bought it and mandated it. Then you're in a real difficult spot. You would have to change contracts because that's not information that they go.
I had never thought about that until you were describing it. And then I was like, there is a benefit to being like, oh, all this is in some other system, in some spreadsheets. We can't possibly find them or show them to you. Or if we do, people might change numbers or whatever. This system of record for that suddenly opens up a level of transparency that I don't think many people are comfortable with.
Yeah, it's not. I can understand a system like that on the type of contract where it's cost reimbursable or like a very open commercial setup. But on a target cost or an activity schedule, that's a horrible world to open up.
Okay, I broke your brain.
That's very good. But no, I think I'd love to see it. If anyone wants the detailed setup, I'm willing to sell it for a lovely price.
All right, we're going to be short on time, so I'll very briefly touch on mine. I think this area of record capture is really, there are definitely companies in the space. And what I mean by record capture is the messiness and disconnected nature of what labor plant materials we had on site, spent, installed on our projects. So there's a whole space in terms of progress capture that is fairly well developed, but the actual inputs to that being labor plant material. There are companies, there are good companies in the space, but when I go from project to project, people are still in a pretty messy, ugly, disconnected. We have some systems, but we don't really trust the outputs of them. They only capture some things, not all things space. A lot of opportunity for both those companies to do better or make a bigger impact or something new to come along, because it's a big missing piece that connects the commercial to progress.
Yeah, for sure. I think that final accurate set of actual data on site is a bit of the holy grail for anyone who can nail it. It's an interesting space though. I've had a conversation with a couple of contractors where the plant operators and software that comes with it, like a Trimble, they have loads of data, but they don't like to share it outside of their own world. So that's a real shame. Hopefully that changes. Obviously, they're the easiest because they're big bits of kit with technology on board.
You can track when they're on, they're off, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of them will track. They're actually obviously working off of the model and tracking like excavated material and bits and pieces. But the people and like minor materials, that is a tough spot. But it'll be interesting to see which one sort of pulls ahead in that race.
Right, I know we're definitely out of time, so mate, do you want to read us out?
Yes, thank you very much everyone for tuning into today's show. If you did enjoy the episode, please do think about liking this video or following us on your chosen podcast platform. We really appreciate your support and we'll catch you all next week.
Bye-bye.